The gallery hall fell silent the moment Willa Rhodes stepped through the glass doors, her worn canvas jacket a stark contrast to the sea of designer gowns and tailored suits that filled the renovated warehouse space in downtown Manhattan. She hadn't wanted to come. Her best friend Morgan had practically dragged her here, insisting that the charity art auction would be good for her career, that someone might notice her work among the hundreds of pieces donated by struggling artists desperate for recognition. Willa had agreed only because 3 of her paintings hung somewhere in this glittering crowd, and she'd spent 6 months perfecting them in her cramped Brooklyn studio between shifts at the diner. But Morgan had disappeared 20 minutes ago to network, leaving Willa alone near the champagne table, clutching a glass of sparkling water, because she couldn't afford to dull her senses in a room full of strangers who looked at her like she'd tracked mud across their marble floors. "That's her," a voice whispered nearby, sharp enough to cut through the gentle hum of conversation. Willa's stomach tightened. She recognized that voice. Chelsea Morningside, an artist whose father owned half the galleries in New York, who'd never had to choose between buying paint or paying rent. "The one who copied your composition?" another voice replied, this one male and nasal. "Worse than copied. She stole it." Chelsea's words dripped with practiced indignation. "I showed her my preliminary sketches at the Studio Collective last spring. She acted so interested, so supportive. Then she rushed home and painted her own version before I could finish mine." Willa's heart hammered against her ribs. That wasn't true. Her painting the triptych of the sleeping city, all shadows and streetlights and lonely windows, had been in development for over a year. She had dozens of sketches in her apartment to prove it. But proof didn't matter when Chelsea's father owned 3 of the galleries represented here tonight, when Chelsea herself had 200,000 followers on social media, when Willa was nobody from nowhere with paint-stained fingers and a Metro card that would expire next week. "We should say something," the male voice urged, "publicly. Make sure everyone knows what kind of person she is." "Oh, I intend to," Chelsea said, and Willa heard the smile in her voice. "Right after the bidding closes, maximum humiliation." Willa's hands trembled. She set down her water glass before she could drop it and turned to leave, but the crowd had thickened around the main display area where the auctioneer was setting up his podium. She was trapped in a river of bodies all flowing in the same direction, carrying her toward the center of the room whether she wanted to go or not. The auction began with smaller pieces, photographs, and sculptures that went for respectable amounts to polite applause. Willa tried to edge toward the exit, but every gap she aimed for closed before she could reach it. The warehouse felt suddenly suffocating despite its soaring ceilings and industrial windows that looked out onto the Manhattan night. Then the auctioneer's voice rang out, bright and professional. "Lot 47, a stunning triptych by an emerging artist, Willa Rhodes. Insomnia captures the beating heart of our city after dark. Shall we start at 500? Willa's throat went dry. Her work looked beautiful under the gallery lights, the 3 canvases arranged to show the progression of night from dusk to dawn. She'd poured everything into those paintings, every lonely night in her studio, every moment of wondering if she'd ever make something that mattered. The bidding started slow. 700. 900. Willa felt a flutter of desperate hope. If it sold for enough, she could pay rent for 2 months, maybe 3 if she was careful. 1,200, a woman's voice called from the left side of the room. 1,500, countered a man in a gray suit. The auctioneer's gavel hovered. 1,500 going once. Wait! Chelsea's voice cut through the room like a blade. She stepped forward from the crowd, her crimson dress catching the light, her expression arranged in perfect concern. Before this goes any further, there's something everyone should know about this piece. The auctioneer paused, confusion flickering across his face. Ms. Morningside? That painting, Chelsea said, her voice carrying to every corner of the warehouse, is stolen. The room erupted in whispers. Willa felt the blood drain from her face as hundreds of eyes turned toward her. That's not true, she managed to say, but her voice came out thin and weak, swallowed by the growing murmur of the crowd. Chelsea turned to face her, and Willa saw the triumph glittering in her eyes. I showed Willa my sketches for this exact composition last spring. The vertical panels, the progression of darkness, even the lonely window motif. She looked me right in the eye and told me how beautiful it would be. Then she went home and painted it herself, rushing to finish before I could complete my version. I never, Willa started, but Chelsea spoke over her. I have witnesses, people from the studio collective who saw my preliminary work. I even posted some of my sketches on Instagram months before Willa suddenly completed this piece. Chelsea pulled out her phone, tapping at the screen. Here, posted in March, 6 weeks before she claims she finished painting. The phone passed through the crowd, people crowding around to look at the screen. Willa felt the world tilting beneath her feet. She wanted to scream that she'd been working on the concept for over a year, that her sketches dated back to the previous autumn, but the words stuck in her throat as she watched people's expressions shift from curiosity to disgust. This is a charity auction, someone muttered. How could she? Trying to profit off someone else's work, another voice added. I've seen this before, a man in an expensive suit announced to the people around him. These struggling artists, they get desperate, start cutting corners. Willa's vision blurred. This couldn't be happening. She'd worked so hard, sacrificed so much. Her paintings were her own, born from her own sleepless nights and her own aching loneliness, and now Chelsea was taking even that from her, twisting it into something ugly in front of everyone who mattered in the New York art world. Ms. Rhodes. The auctioneer's voice was cold now, professional courtesy replaced by barely concealed disdain. Do you have anything to say in your defense? She opened her mouth, but what could she say? That Chelsea was lying? Who would believe her? She had no social media following, no famous father, no influential friends. She was just a waitress who painted in her spare time and dreamed of something more. I thought not, Chelsea said softly, and Willa heard the satisfaction in her voice. I just wanted everyone to know what kind of person they'd be supporting if they purchased this work. Theft isn't art. The crowd's whispers grew louder, and Willa felt tears burning behind her eyes. She wouldn't cry here. She wouldn't give Chelsea that satisfaction, but she also couldn't seem to move, couldn't seem to breathe, couldn't seem to do anything but stand frozen in the center of this nightmare while the art world she'd dreamed of joining turned its back on her. How disappointing, a woman near the front said, loud enough for Willa to hear. She seemed so genuine. They always do, her companion replied. The auctioneer cleared his throat, reaching for his gavel to withdraw the piece from auction, and Willa knew that this was it. This was the moment her career ended before it even began. After tonight, after Chelsea's accusation spread through social media and gallery circles, no one would ever take her seriously again. Then a voice cut through the chaos, deep and precise and absolutely commanding. $500,000. The warehouse fell silent. Every head turned toward the back of the room, and Willa followed their gaze to see a figure standing in the shadows near the entrance. He stepped forward into the light, and Willa's breath caught in her throat. He was beautiful in a way that didn't seem quite human, all sharp angles and aristocratic features beneath hair so pale it was almost white. His skin held the same alabaster quality, smooth and flawless, and when he moved, it was with a liquid grace that made everyone else in the room look clumsy by comparison. He wore a black suit that probably cost more than Willa's annual rent, tailored perfectly to his tall frame, and his eyes, even from this distance, Willa could see they were an unusual shade of amber, bright and intense as a wolf's. I bid $500,000, he repeated, his accent carrying hints of somewhere old and far away, somewhere that predated the modern world surrounding them. For all 3 panels of Insomnia. The auctioneer's mouth opened and closed soundlessly. The current bid had been $1,500. This man had just increased it by over 30,000%. Sir, that is, are you certain? The auctioneer finally managed. Quite certain. The man's gaze swept across the crowd, and people actually stepped back from the weight of his attention. When his eyes found Chelsea, she went pale. Unless someone would like to challenge my bid. No one spoke. The warehouse was so quiet that Willa could hear her own heartbeat pounding in her ears. The man walked forward, and the crowd parted before him like water before the prow of a ship. He moved with absolute confidence, with the bearing of someone who'd never questioned his right to command any room he entered. When he reached the space where Willa stood frozen, he stopped and turned to face Chelsea. You made an accusation, he said, his voice soft but carrying to every corner of the room. You called this artist a thief. Chelsea lifted her chin, trying to maintain her composure, but Willa saw fear flickering in her eyes. I simply stated facts. She stole my composition. Did she? The man tilted his head slightly, and something about the gesture made him seem distinctly inhuman, predatory. Tell me, Ms. Morningside, when exactly did you post these sketches you claim as evidence? March 15th, Chelsea said, pulling up her phone again. I can show you. Please do. Chelsea held out her phone, and the man took it, his fingers careful not to touch hers. He studied the screen for a long moment, then looked up at Chelsea with an expression of polite interest. Your timestamp says March 15th, he agreed, but the metadata says something different. Would you like to know what it says? Chelsea's face went white. It says these images were created yesterday. The man's voice remained perfectly pleasant, but something cold had entered it, something that made the temperature in the room seem to drop. You took your existing sketches that were indeed inspired by Ms. Rhodes's work after you saw early versions of it last spring and backdated them using a simple editing application. Clumsy. I'd expected better. That's not I didn't, Chelsea stammered, but the man simply handed her phone to the auctioneer. Check for yourself, he said. The original file creation date is visible in the properties, October of last year. Conveniently, after Ms. Rhodes had already shown early versions of this composition at a small gallery opening in Brooklyn. I have the catalog from that, showing if anyone would like to verify. The auctioneer examined the phone, his expression darkening. Around the room, people pulled out their own phones, typing frantically. Willa realized they were searching for information about her, about the gallery, showing she'd almost forgotten a tiny opening at a coffee shop in Bushwick where she'd displayed a dozen pieces, including her preliminary studies for the triptych. There are photos, someone announced, holding up their phone. From October. Her sketches were posted by the gallery's Instagram account. The composition is clearly already developed. Chelsea's face had gone from white to red. This is ridiculous. You can't possibly... I can, the man said softly. And I do. You attempted to destroy this woman's reputation in front of the very people whose respect she needs to build her career. You did so knowingly, maliciously, and with manufactured evidence. I believe the appropriate phrase is projection. You're familiar with the concept? The crowd was turning now, people looking at Chelsea with the same disgust they'd directed at Willa just moments before. Willa watched it happen with a sense of surreal disconnection, unable to quite process what was occurring. Who are you? Chelsea demanded, her voice shaking. You have no right? I have every right. The man's eyes seemed to catch the light strangely, reflecting it back with an amber gleam that was distinctly non-human. I am Jasper Constantine, and I've been collecting art for longer than your family has owned galleries. I know theft when I see it, and I know talent when I see it. Ms. Rhodes has talent. You have your father's money and a desperate need for attention. They are not the same thing. Chelsea opened her mouth, closed it again, then turned and fled toward the exit. Several people moved to follow her, and Willa heard the whispers starting, the same vicious gossip machine that had been ready to destroy her, now turning its attention to Chelsea instead. She should have felt vindicated, triumphant, but mostly she just felt numb, overwhelmed by how quickly everything had changed. Jasper Constantine turned to the auctioneer. I believe we had a bid on the table, $500,000 for Insomnia. Do you accept? The auctioneer looked like he'd been hit by a truck, but he nodded rapidly. Yes, absolutely. Sold to Mr. Constantine for $500,000. The gavel came down with a sharp crack that seemed to wake Willa from her daze. $500,000 for her paintings. She was going to pass out. Ms. Rhodes. Jasper's attention shifted to her, and Willa found herself pinned by those strange amber eyes. Up close, he was even more striking, his features so perfect they seemed carved from marble, his presence so commanding that she had to resist the urge to step back. Might I have a word with you in private? Willa's voice came out as barely a whisper. Why did you do that? Because your work deserves to be seen, not buried under lies from someone who can't create anything genuine herself. He gestured toward a hallway that led away from the main gallery space. Please. I promise this won't take long. She should probably say no, should probably demand answers here, in public, where there were witnesses. But something about him drew her forward, and she found herself following him away from the crowd, away from the whispers and stares and flashing phone cameras. The hallway was quieter, dimmer. Jasper stopped near a window that looked out over the Manhattan skyline, and when he turned to face her, Willa finally found her voice. "I don't understand what just happened." "You were about to be ruined by a jealous child playing games she doesn't understand," Jasper said. "I stopped it." "But why? You don't know me. You've never seen my work before tonight." Something that might have been amusement flickered across his face. "Haven't I?" Willa stared at him. "What?" "I've been watching your career for some time, Miss Rhodes. I visit that coffee shop in Bushwick where you first displayed your work. I've purchased several of your pieces through intermediaries. I own the small gallery in Queens that gave you your first solo show last summer. Did you think any of that was coincidence?" Her head spun. "Why would you do that?" "Because you have a gift," he said simply. "You see the world the way I do, the beauty and darkness, the loneliness of immortality, the way cities breathe and die and transform after the sun goes down. Your work speaks to something very old in me, Ms. Rhodes, something I thought I'd lost centuries ago." Centuries. The word hung between them, impossible and terrifying, and somehow completely logical given everything she'd seen tonight. "You're not human," Willa whispered. Jasper smiled, and for the first time, she saw his teeth perfectly white, perfectly normal, except for the canines that were just slightly too long, too sharp. "No, I'm not." She should run, should scream, should do anything except stand here, looking into the eyes of something that had just admitted to being inhuman. But her feet wouldn't move, and her voice wouldn't work, and all she could think was that this explained everything about him, the unnatural grace, the predatory stillness, the sense that he was something ancient and dangerous wearing a human shape. "You're a vampire," she said, and was surprised when her voice came out steady. "Yes." He didn't move, didn't try to come closer. "I am Jasper Constantine, king of the American territories, and I've ruled this city from the shadows for 200 years, and I've been waiting for someone like you for most of them." Willa's back hit the wall behind her, though she didn't remember moving. "Someone like me?" "An artist who understands darkness without being consumed by it, someone who can capture what it means to exist in the spaces between life and death, who can paint loneliness and beauty and truth all at once." He took a single step closer, and Willa's breath caught. "Your Insomnia series doesn't just show a sleeping city. It shows my world, Ms. Rhodes, the world of things that wake when humans dream. And you painted it without knowing what you were really seeing." "I don't," Willa swallowed hard. "What do you want from me?" "Nothing you're not willing to give." His voice was gentle, almost sad. "I want you to continue creating. I want to support your work. Protect you from people like Chelsea Morningside, who would destroy you out of spite and jealousy. I want to give you the freedom to paint whatever moves you without worrying about rent or supplies or whether your Metro card will work tomorrow." "In exchange for what?" "Your time, occasionally. Your company. I find myself lonely after 2 centuries of hiding what I am, and I think you might understand that loneliness better than most." He paused. "And if I'm being entirely honest, I want the chance to know you. To see if the woman behind those paintings is as remarkable as the art she creates." Willa's mind raced. This was insane, impossible. She should refuse, should run back into the gallery and lose herself in the crowd, and pretend this conversation never happened. But $500,000 would change her life, would give her the freedom to paint full-time instead of splitting her energy between art and survival, would open doors that had been slammed in her face her entire career. And there was something else, too, something she didn't want to examine too closely. The way Jasper looked at her, like she was valuable, important, worth protecting. She'd spent her whole life being invisible, being overlooked, being not quite good enough. This creature who could command rooms with a glance was offering her the opposite. "I need time to think," she managed. "Of course." Jasper reached into his jacket and produced a card, heavy cream paper with an embossed address in the Upper East Side. "This is where I can be reached. Come by tomorrow evening if you'd like to discuss this further, or don't. The painting is yours regardless. Consider it a gift to someone whose art has given me more pleasure than you can imagine. He turned to leave, then paused and looked back at her. "For what it's worth, Miss Rhodes, I meant what I said. Your work is extraordinary. Chelsea Morningside tried to destroy you tonight because she recognized that truth and couldn't bear it. Don't let people like her make you question your gift." Then he was gone, disappearing down the hallway with that supernatural grace, leaving Willa alone with a business card and a head full of impossible thoughts. She didn't remember walking back into the main gallery, didn't remember Morgan finding her and squealing about the sale, or the way people suddenly wanted to talk to her, to get her contact information, to schedule meetings about future shows. The rest of the night passed in a blur of congratulations and questions and barely concealed curiosity about her mysterious benefactor. It was only when she finally made it home to her tiny apartment in Brooklyn, after Morgan had hugged her goodbye and promised to call tomorrow, that Willa let herself collapse onto her second-hand couch and really think about what had happened. A vampire. The king of the American territories, whatever that meant. And he'd been watching her work, buying her paintings, following her career for months without her knowledge. It should have terrified her. It did terrify her. But it also thrilled her in a way she didn't want to admit, because Jasper Constantine had looked at her like she mattered, like her art was important, like she was worth fighting for in front of a room full of people who'd been ready to destroy her. Willa pulled out the card he'd given her and studied it in the dim light from her apartment window. Heavy paper, expensive printing, an address that probably led to a penthouse or townhouse worth more than she'd earn in several lifetimes. She should throw it away, should forget this entire night and focus on the legitimate opportunities that had opened up thanks to the auction sale. Instead, she set the card on her cluttered coffee table where she'd see it first thing in the morning and tried to sleep. The next evening found Willa standing outside a limestone townhouse in the East 70s, her heart hammering against her ribs as she checked the address on Jasper's card for the third time. She'd spent all day trying to talk herself out of coming. Morgan had called 3 times, ecstatic about the opportunities flooding in 2 galleries wanted to meet with Willa, and a collector in Boston had inquired about commissioning a piece. Everything Willa had dreamed of was suddenly within reach, and she should be focusing on that, not on the impossible creature who'd made it all possible. But she couldn't stop thinking about the way Jasper had looked at her paintings, the way he'd described seeing his world reflected in her work. She couldn't stop wondering what it meant that something immortal and dangerous had been following her career, collecting her art, waiting for the right moment to reveal himself. Before she could second-guess herself again, Willa climbed the steps and pressed the doorbell. The door opened almost immediately, revealing not Jasper, but a woman with the same pale hair and alabaster skin, the same predatory grace. She wore a perfectly tailored suit and regarded Willa with eyes that were a deep crimson instead of amber. "You must be Willa Rhodes," the woman said, her voice carrying the same old-world accent as Jasper's. "I'm Seraphine, the king's seneschal. Please come in." The interior of the townhouse was exactly what Willa had expected, and somehow more all dark wood and antique furniture, and art that probably belonged in museums. But there was warmth, too, soft lighting and comfortable spaces that kept it from feeling like a mausoleum. Seraphine led her through a hallway lined with paintings, and Willa recognized 3 of her own pieces among the collection. The sight sent a strange shiver through her. Jasper really had been collecting her work. They emerged into a library that took up most of the townhouse's first floor. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves lined every wall, filled with volumes in dozens of languages. A fire crackled in an enormous fireplace, and beside it, rising from a leather chair, was Jasper. He looked different in the firelight, less perfectly composed, more real somehow. He'd traded his formal suit for dark trousers and a white shirt with the sleeves rolled to his elbows, revealing forearms that were all lean muscle and pale skin. When he saw her, something eased in his expression. "You came," he said, and she heard genuine relief in his voice. "I wasn't sure you would." "I wasn't sure I would either," Willa admitted. Jasper gestured to a chair opposite his own. "Please sit. Would you like something to drink? I keep human refreshments for guests, though I admit my selection may be limited." Willa perched on the edge of the chair, too nervous to relax. "I'm fine. I need to understand what's happening, what you want from me." "I told you last night. Your company, your time, the chance to know you. But why? The question burst out of her. You're a vampire king. I'm just a waitress who paints. We exist in completely different worlds. Jasper settled back into his chair, the firelight casting shadows across his aristocratic features. Do you know what happens when you live for 2 centuries, Miss Rhodes? You watch everyone you care about grow old and die. You watch cities transform beyond recognition. You watch art and music and culture evolve while you remain frozen, unchanging, immortal. After a while, you stop trying to connect with the mortal world because the pain of losing people becomes unbearable. He paused, his amber eyes distant. I've spent the last 50 years alone except for my court, my fellow vampires. We understand each other, but we're all frozen in the same way, all trapped in the same eternal existence. And then I walked into a coffee shop in Brooklyn one night last year, and I saw your paintings hanging on the wall. Willa's throat felt tight. What did you see? Myself, Jasper said softly. My loneliness, my isolation, my eternal night, but also the beauty I'd forgotten to look for, the way darkness can be comforting instead of frightening, the way solitude can be peaceful instead of painful. You showed me my own existence through new eyes, and I realized I'd been wrong to cut myself off from the mortal world. There was still beauty here, still connection, still reasons to engage with life beyond simple survival. He leaned forward, and Willa found herself unable to look away from his intense gaze. So I started following your career, buying your work, supporting you through intermediaries because I wasn't ready to reveal myself. And the more I learned about you, the more I wanted to know. You're self-taught, working 2 jobs to afford supplies. You paint late at night when you should be sleeping because that's the only time you have. You create these extraordinary pieces about loneliness and darkness while living in a tiny apartment where you're lonely and waiting for dawn so you can go back to serving coffee to people who don't see you. Willa felt tears pricking at her eyes. How do you know all that? Because I recognize it. Because we're the same, you and I. We're both creatures of the night, creating beauty out of isolation, trying to make meaning from emptiness. The only difference is that your night eventually ends, and mine never does. So you want what? To add me to your collection? Willa heard the bitterness in her own voice. Another beautiful thing to own? No. Jasper's voice was sharp, almost hurt. I want to know you, to talk with you about art and life and everything in between, to give you the resources to create without constraint and see what you produce, to perhaps, if you're willing, not be quite so alone anymore. He stood and moved to the bookshelf, pulling down a leather-bound volume. When he returned, he opened it to reveal sketches his own work, Willa realized, detailed drawings in ink and charcoal that were centuries old based on the style. I was an artist once too, Jasper said quietly. In another life, another world. I gave it up when I was turned because my perspective changed too dramatically. I couldn't capture human emotion anymore once I'd lost my own humanity. But looking at your work, I remember what it felt like. That desperate need to translate what's in your soul onto canvas. The way nothing else matters when you're in the middle of creating something. The loneliness of being the only one who sees the world exactly the way you do. Willa took the book, studying the sketches. They were beautiful, technically perfect, but emotionally distant, like looking at the world through glass. She could see the talent, but also the disconnect Jasper described. These are sad, she said softly. Yes? He took the book back and closed it carefully. They are, because I was trying to pretend I was still human when I made them, and the lie shows through. I stopped drawing after a decade because I couldn't bear the reminder of what I'd lost. But you still love art. I never stopped loving art. I just stopped being able to create it. He set the book aside and met her eyes again. That's another reason I was drawn to your work. You capture the truth of darkness without being trapped in it. You see beauty in the night without pretending it isn't lonely. You have the perspective I lost, and experiencing your art lets me remember what it felt like to be human enough to feel that way. Willa's chest felt tight. She'd come here expecting manipulation or demands, some vampiric scheme she didn't understand. Instead, she found this ancient creature who looked at her art and saw himself, who'd spent months supporting her anonymously because he understood her struggle, who was offering her not just money but connection, understanding, recognition from someone who truly comprehended what she was trying to create. "I'm scared," she admitted. "I know, you should be. I'm dangerous, Ms. Rhodes. My world is dangerous. There are other vampires who would see you as prey or a toy or leverage against me. By revealing myself to you, I've put you at risk." "Then why do it?" "Because I'm tired of hiding, tired of pretending I don't long for connection just because I'm no longer human, and because when I saw Chelsea Morningside trying to destroy you last night, I couldn't stay in the shadows anymore. You deserved better than to be torn down by someone whose jealousy would have buried your talent before it could flourish." He moved closer, and Willa's breath caught. Up close, she could see that his skin wasn't quite right, too smooth, too perfect, like porcelain instead of flesh. But his eyes were warm despite their inhuman color, and when he spoke, his voice was gentle. "I'm asking for a chance, Ms. Rhodes. Let me support your work. Let me show you my world. Let us see if this connection I feel when I look at your art might grow into something more. And if at any point you want to walk away, I'll ensure you're protected and provided for. I won't trap you or force you or turn you into something you're not. I just want the opportunity to know you." Willa thought about her tiny apartment, her 2 jobs, the constant exhaustion of trying to create while surviving. She thought about the galleries that were suddenly interested in her work, opportunities that had opened because Jasper had defended her. She thought about standing in this beautiful library surrounded by centuries of art and culture, talking to someone who actually understood what she was trying to say with her paintings. It was insane, impossible, dangerous in ways she probably couldn't even imagine. "Okay," she heard herself say. "Let's try." Jasper's smile transformed his face, making him look almost human in its genuine joy. "Thank you. You won't regret this, I promise." "I might," Willa said, but she was smiling too. "I really might." "Then I'll have to work very hard to ensure you don't." He offered his hand, and after a moment's hesitation, Willa took it. His skin was cool against hers, but his grip was gentle, careful of his supernatural strength. "Welcome to my world, Willa Rhodes. I think you're going to find it very inspiring." Over the next 3 weeks, Willa's life transformed in ways she couldn't have imagined. During the day, she worked with galleries and collectors, securing a solo show scheduled for the spring, and selling enough work to finally quit her waitressing job. Morgan was ecstatic, convinced that Willa's mysterious benefactor was a secret billionaire who'd fallen in love with her art, and Willa didn't correct her because the truth was far stranger than anything Morgan could imagine. But it was the nights that truly changed everything. Jasper was an extraordinary teacher, revealing the hidden world of vampires that existed beneath the surface of New York City. He took her to the Court of Night, a converted subway station deep below Times Square, where vampires gathered to socialize and conduct business. He introduced her to other members of his kind: Seraphine, his sharp-witted seneschal; Lucian, his second-in-command who regarded Willa with thinly veiled suspicion; and dozens of others who bowed to Jasper with genuine respect and fear. The vampire world was more complex than Willa had imagined, governed by ancient laws and territories and power structures that had evolved over millennia. Jasper explained it all patiently, answering her endless questions without ever making her feel foolish for not understanding. "We're not the mindless monsters of legend," he told her one night as they walked through Central Park after the humans had gone home. "We're organized, civilized, bound by codes of honor older than most human civilizations. We feed carefully, from willing donors or blood banks. We police our own when someone breaks our laws. We've learned to coexist with humanity by remaining hidden, taking what we need without destroying what sustains us." "But you could destroy it," Willa said, "if you wanted to." "Easily." Jasper's tone was matter-of-fact. "But why would we? Humanity creates such beauty, such art and music and culture. We're parasites, yes, but we're parasites who genuinely appreciate our hosts. Most vampires spend their immortal lives pursuing human achievements, collecting art, attending concerts, patronizing theaters and museums. We need humanity for more than just blood." He glanced at her with a slight smile. "Besides, vampires are rare. There are perhaps 10,000 of us in the entire world, carefully distributed across territories to avoid detection. Humanity numbers in the billions. We survive by cooperation, not domination. Willa absorbed all of it, filling sketchbook after sketchbook with ideas for new paintings. The vampire world was dark and dangerous and beautiful in exactly the way she'd always imagined darkness could be, and Jasper gave her access to all of it, protecting her with his presence while letting her observe and learn and create. But beyond the education in vampire culture, something else was growing between them. Conversations that stretched for hours as they discussed art and philosophy and the nature of existence. Moments of comfortable silence as they sat in Jasper's library, Willa sketching while he read books in languages that predated modern English. Small touches his hand on her back as he guided her through a crowded vampire gathering, her fingers brushing his as she showed him her latest work. Willa found herself thinking about him during the day, counting the hours until evening when she could see him again. Found herself noticing details, the way he listened with complete attention when she spoke, the rare, genuine smiles that softened his aristocratic features, the careful control he exercised to avoid overwhelming her with his supernatural nature. She was falling for him, for a vampire king who was 2 centuries old and capable of killing her with barely a thought. It should have terrified her. Instead, it felt like the most natural thing in the world. One night, about a month after the auction, Jasper took her to his private studio on the top floor of the townhouse. Willa had been in most of the building by now, but this room had remained locked, off limits even to Seraphine. "I haven't opened this door in 50 years, Jasper said quietly as he unlocked it. "I'm trusting you with something I haven't shown anyone." The studio was dusty but beautiful, all north-facing windows and natural light during the day. Canvases lined the walls, Jasper's abandoned work, paintings from across the decades that showed the same technical perfection and emotional distance she'd seen in his sketches. "Why show me this?" Willa asked, studying a portrait of a woman from the 1920s, beautiful and perfectly rendered but somehow hollow. "Because I want to try again." Jasper moved to stand beside her, and she felt the cool presence of him at her back. "You see the world the way I used to, before I lost the ability to translate it to canvas. I thought perhaps if I watched you work, if I learned from you the way you've been learning from me, I might be able to create again." Willa turned to face him, startled. "You want me to teach you?" "I want us to create together, to see if combining your perspective with my technical skill might produce something neither of us could make alone." He hesitated, and Willa realized it was the first time she'd seen him look uncertain. "If you're willing." "Yes." She didn't even have to think about it. "Yes, I'd love that." They started that very night, dragging dust covers off furniture and opening windows to clear the stale air. Jasper produced fresh supplies from storage canvases and paints and brushes that were probably worth a fortune, and they set up opposite each other in the space, beginning to sketch out ideas. It felt intimate in a way Willa hadn't anticipated, sharing the creative process with someone else. She'd always worked alone, protective of her half-formed ideas and imperfect early attempts, but with Jasper, it felt safe. He understood the vulnerability of creating, the terror of translating internal vision to external reality. "What do you see when you look at the city?" he asked as they worked. Loneliness," Willa said without hesitation. "Millions of people all pressed together but isolated in their own worlds. Lights in windows that might be homes or might be prisons. The way darkness reveals truth that daylight hides. That's what I see in your work, that dichotomy between isolation and connection." Jasper's charcoal moved across his canvas in swift, confident strokes. "But what do you see in me? In my world?" Willa considered the question carefully. Dignity, control, the weight of time, but also longing. You're all so careful, so civilized, but underneath there's this hunger. Not for blood, or not just for blood, for meaning, for connection, for something to make immortality feel less like a prison sentence. She glanced at him and found him watching her with an intensity that made her breath catch. "You see too much," he said softly. "Is that a problem?" "No." He set down his charcoal and moved closer, and Willa's heart began to pound. "It's extraordinary. You're extraordinary. I've spent 2 centuries guarding my thoughts, controlling my nature, never letting anyone see the truth beneath the surface. And you look at me for 5 minutes and understand things I've never spoken aloud. Maybe I'm wrong, Willa whispered, but she didn't step back as he approached. You're not. Jasper stopped just inches away, close enough that she could see the faint pattern of veins beneath his pale skin, the way his eyes reflected the moonlight from the windows. You're not wrong about any of it. The loneliness, the hunger, the desperate need for meaning. I've spent 50 years pretending I'm above it all, that I don't need connection, because I have my court and my power and my careful routines. And then you walked into my world with your paintings and your insight and your stubborn refusal to be anything less than authentically yourself. And I realized I was lying. I do need connection. I need you. Willa's breath came short and fast. Jasper, I know this is fast. I know I'm asking something impossible. I'm a vampire, an immortal creature who exists in darkness, and you're a human woman with a life and dreams that have nothing to do with my world. But I have to tell you the truth. I'm falling in love with you, Willa Rhodes. I've been falling since the first time I saw your work, and spending time with you has only made it worse. You make me want to be part of the mortal world again, to feel things I thought I'd lost forever, to wake up each evening with purpose beyond simple survival. He reached out slowly, telegraphing his movement, giving her every chance to pull away. When she didn't, his cool fingers brushed her cheek with infinite gentleness. I'm not asking you to feel the same way. I'm not asking for anything except honesty. But I needed you to know. You've changed my existence, Willa. You've given me back something I thought was lost forever. Willa's eyes burned with tears. She should be afraid, should be running, should be remembering that this beautiful, dangerous creature was a predator who drank blood to survive and could kill her without effort, but all she could think was that she'd never felt so seen, so understood, so valued. Jasper looked at her art and saw her soul. He listened to her rambling thoughts about creativity and darkness and didn't dismiss them as naive or overwrought. He'd defended her in front of the entire New York art world and then offered her his own vulnerability in return. I love you too, she whispered, and watched something fierce and joyful blaze in his eyes. I don't know when it happened or how, but I do. I love you, Jasper Constantine, and it's terrifying and wonderful and completely insane. His smile was the most human expression she'd ever seen on his face, pure happiness without any aristocratic control. Then we're both insane together. He leaned in slowly, giving her time to refuse, to pull away, to change her mind. But Willa rose on her toes to close the distance between them, and when their lips met, it felt like the most natural thing in the world. Kissing Jasper was strange and wonderful. His lips were cool against hers, his breath unnecessary but present anyway, as if his body remembered the habit of breathing. He was careful, controlled, one hand cradling her face while the other rested lightly on her waist, as if he was afraid of hurting her with his supernatural strength. Willa pressed closer, her hands sliding up to grip his shoulders, and felt him shudder against her. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard despite his lack of need for air, Jasper rested his forehead against hers. I've been wanting to do that for weeks, he admitted. Me too, Willa laughed, dizzy with emotion. This is crazy, right? I barely know you. You're a vampire king. I'm a struggling artist. This can't possibly work. It can't, Jasper agreed. By every logical measure, this is doomed to fail spectacularly. So what do we do? Try anyway. He pulled back enough to look into her eyes, his expression serious. I'm not going to pretend this will be easy. My world is dangerous, and there are vampires who will see you as a weakness they can exploit. There are rules about relationships between vampires and humans, complications I'll have to navigate. And eventually, you'll grow old while I remain the same, and we'll have to decide how to handle that inevitability. That's a cheerful thought, Willa muttered. I believe in honesty, Jasper's thumb brushed across her cheekbone. But I also believe that what we have is worth fighting for. If you're willing to try, I'll do everything in my power to protect you and give us the best chance at happiness possible. Willa thought about her tiny apartment in Brooklyn, about the life she'd been living just a month ago. Safe, predictable, lonely. Then she thought about the last few weeks, the excitement of Jasper's world, the creative inspiration, the feeling of being truly known by someone who understood her in ways she hadn't thought possible. "I'm willing," she said. "Let's try." The next few months were the happiest of Willa's life. She threw herself into painting, creating new work inspired by the vampire world Jasper had revealed to her. Her solo show in the spring was a massive success, with every piece selling before the opening night even ended. Critics praised her haunting exploration of immortal themes and unique perspective on darkness and beauty. And Willa bit back smiles because they had no idea how literal her inspiration was. Meanwhile, her relationship with Jasper deepened in ways that felt both natural and surreal. They fell into a rhythm, Willa working during the day, Jasper joining her once the sun set, the two of them spending evenings together exploring the city, or creating in the studio, or simply talking in the library while the fire crackled and time seemed to slow down. Jasper was a wonderful partner, attentive and thoughtful, and endlessly patient with Willa's questions about his world. He taught her vampire history, showed her ancient texts, introduced her to supernatural creatures she'd never imagined existed. But he was also interested in her world, asking about her childhood and her artistic process and her dreams for the future. I want to teach someday," Willa told him one night as they lay together on the floor of the studio, surrounded by half-finished canvases. Jasper didn't sleep, but he'd learned to rest beside her while she dozed, content to watch her or read or simply exist in the shared space. Not formal classes necessarily, but maybe mentoring young artists the way I wish someone had mentored me. "You'd be excellent at it," Jasper said, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on her arm. "You have the gift of seeing potential in others. It's one of the things I love most about you." "What else do you love?" Willa asked, half joking, but Jasper took the question seriously. "Your courage. The way you looked at me that first night and decided to trust despite every instinct telling you to run. Your empathy, you see the humanity in everyone, even creatures who technically aren't human anymore. Your stubbornness. When you decide something matters, you pursue it relentlessly, whether that's perfecting a painting or understanding my world or giving us a chance despite the impossibility of it all." He shifted to look down at her, his amber eyes intense in the moonlight from the windows. "I love that you make me want to be better, to engage with the world instead of hiding from it, to remember what it felt like to be human enough to dream. You've given me back my purpose, Willa. That's a gift beyond measure." Willa felt tears prick at her eyes. "You give me purpose too. Before I met you, I was just surviving, working and painting and hoping that someday someone would notice my work. You made me believe I was worth noticing, worth fighting for, worth loving." "You are," Jasper said fiercely. "Never doubt that." They kissed there on the studio floor as moonlight painted everything silver, and Willa thought that maybe impossible things could work out after all. But she should have known happiness that bright couldn't last without challenge. The first hint of trouble came from Lucian, Jasper's second in command. Willa had known from the start that Lucian disapproved of her relationship with Jasper. The vampire was coldly polite when they interacted, but his crimson eyes held thinly veiled hostility whenever he looked at her. "He thinks I'm a distraction," Willa said to Jasper after a particularly tense encounter at the Court of Night. "That I'm making you weak." "Lucian thinks everything that doesn't directly serve vampire interests is a distraction," Jasper replied, unbothered. "He's been my second for 80 years, and he's served me well, but he doesn't understand that strength comes from connection, not isolation. I'm a better king with you in my life, not a worse one." "Are you sure? Maybe he has a point. I don't know anything about vampire politics or—" Jasper silenced her with a kiss. "Lucian's objections have nothing to do with your qualifications and everything to do with his fear of change. The vampire world has been stagnant for centuries, trapped in old ways and older grudges. You represent something new, something that challenges our assumptions about how we relate to humanity. That terrifies people like Lucian." "Should I be worried?" "No." Jasper's tone was absolutely certain. "Lucian is loyal to me, even if he disagrees with my choices, and anyone who tried to harm you would face my wrath, which no one in the American territories is foolish enough to risk." Willa wanted to believe him, but she couldn't shake the feeling that Lucian's hostility was more than just philosophical disagreement. There was something personal in the way he looked at her, something that made her skin crawl. Her instincts proved correct 2 weeks later when everything fell apart. Willa was working late in Jasper's studio, taking advantage of his absence at a meeting with other territory leaders to finish a particularly challenging piece. She was so absorbed in her painting that she didn't hear the door open, didn't sense another presence in the room until a cold hand clamped over her mouth from behind. She tried to scream, but the hand was immovable. Tried to struggle, but her attacker was supernaturally strong, lifting her off the ground like she weighed nothing. Quiet little human. The voice was male, unfamiliar, thick with an accent that made Jasper's seem subtle. "We're going for a walk." Willa bit down on the hand covering her mouth and felt her teeth meet flesh. Her attacker cursed and loosened his grip just enough for her to twist free and run for the door. She almost made it. Her fingers were closing on the doorknob when she was yanked backward, slammed against the wall hard enough to knock the breath from her lungs. Stupid girl. The vampire who'd grabbed her was older than Jasper. She could tell somehow something in the way he moved, the predatory stillness that suggested centuries of existence. His hair was the same white as all vampires, but his eyes were a deep purple and his face was cruel. "You cost me a fortune when you caught King Constantine's attention. The American territories were supposed to fall to me after I orchestrated his downfall. Instead, he's stronger than ever, and it's all because of you." Willa's vision swam. She couldn't breathe properly, and the vampire's hand on her throat was slowly tightening. "Who are you?" "I'm Draven Ashford, elder of the European Council, and I've been planning Constantine's demise for 50 years. I had everything arranged, his court divided, his allies turning against him, his isolation making him vulnerable. Then you appeared and gave him reason to engage with the world again. Suddenly he's alert, active, gathering support and strengthening his position. You ruined everything. So, kill me. He'll be, isolated." Again, Willa managed to gasp. "Oh no." Draven's smile was terrifying. "That would be too quick, too merciful. I'm going to take you somewhere your precious king can't follow, and I'm going to use you to draw him out, make him choose between his throne and your life. When he chooses you because he will, the love-sick fool, I'll kill you both and take the American territories for myself." He started dragging her toward the window, and Willa realized with horror that he meant to jump. From 5 stories up. She tried to scream, but her throat was too constricted. Tried to fight, but her human strength was meaningless against supernatural power. The window shattered outward, and suddenly they were falling, Draven holding her against his chest as they plummeted toward the street below. They never hit the ground. Instead, another figure slammed into the mid-air, wrenching Willa from Draven's grip. She caught a glimpse of Lucian's face, twisted with fury, before he passed her to another vampire, Seraphine, who landed lightly on the sidewalk and set Willa carefully on her feet. Above them, Lucian and Draven fought in mid-air, moving too fast for human eyes to follow. They crashed into the side of the townhouse hard enough to crack stone, then ricocheted off toward a neighboring building. "Inside now," Seraphine ordered, pulling Willa toward the townhouse entrance. "The king is on his way, but until he arrives—" She didn't finish. Another vampire dropped from the sky, landing between them and the door. This one was female, with the same ancient quality as Draven, and when she smiled, her fangs were dark with old blood. "Going somewhere?" the female vampire asked. Seraphine pushed Willa behind her. "Morgana, I should have known you'd be involved. Draven never plans anything without his sister to watch his back. Family loyalty, such a beautiful thing." Morgana tilted her head, regarding Willa with interest. "Is this really what has the mighty Jasper Constantine so distracted? She's pretty enough for a human, I suppose, but hardly worth risking his throne over." "You have no idea what she's worth," Seraphine said coldly. "Then let me find out." Morgana moved faster than Willa's eyes could track, suddenly behind Seraphine, her hand wrapping around the seneschal's throat. "Stand aside, or I'll—" She screamed and released Seraphine, staggering backward with smoke rising from her hand. Seraphine's skin had gone molten somehow, hot enough to burn even vampire flesh. "I said, stand aside," Seraphine repeated, and her hands were literally glowing now, red hot with some internal fire. "The king's human is under my protection, and I don't take that duty lightly." Morgana circled them warily, her burned hand already healing. Draven told me Constantine's court had grown soft. I see he was wrong about at least one of you. He's wrong about all of us, a new voice said, and suddenly Jasper was there. He appeared between one heartbeat and the next, moving faster than Willa had ever seen him move. One moment the space before them was empty, the next he stood there in all his supernatural glory, and the temperature seemed to drop 20 degrees. Jasper didn't look human anymore. His amber eyes blazed with inner light, his pale skin seemed to glow, and when he bared his teeth, his fangs were longer than Willa had ever seen them. Power radiated from him in waves, and Willa finally understood what it meant that he was a king, not just an old vampire, but something more. "You attacked my human in my territory," Jasper said, his voice layered with harmonics that made the air vibrate. "You broke ancient law, violated my hospitality, and threatened someone under my explicit protection. Give me one reason I shouldn't execute you where you stand." Morgana had gone pale, backing away from the raw power rolling off Jasper. "We were acting on the Council's orders. The European Council has no authority in the American territories. Try again." Draven believed. I don't care what Draven believed. Jasper's power intensified, and Willa saw cracks forming in the sidewalk beneath his feet. "You touched what is mine. That alone is enough to warrant your death." "Please," Morgana whispered, and for the first time she looked genuinely afraid. "I was following my brother. I didn't want. Then you should have chosen better." Jasper moved, and Morgana's head separated from her body before Willa could even process the motion. The vampire's corpse crumbled to ash in seconds, leaving only a small pile of dust on the sidewalk. Willa's knees gave out, but Seraphine caught her before she could fall. Jasper turned immediately, his terrifying power dimming as he focused on Willa. "Are you hurt?" His voice was back to normal, but his hands shook slightly as he reached for her, and Willa realized he was terrified. "Willa, please, are you hurt?" "I'm okay," she managed, shaken but okay. He grabbed me in the studio, said he was going to use me to draw you out." "He succeeded." Jasper pulled her gently from Seraphine's grip, cradling her against his chest with infinite care. "But not in the way he intended. Where's Lucian?" "Pursuing Draven toward the river," Seraphine reported. "I've called in the rest of the court. They'll ensure he doesn't escape the territory." "Good." Jasper looked at his seneschal. "Thank you for protecting her." "Always." Seraphine's expression softened slightly. "She's good for you, my king. Worth protecting." Jasper carried Willa back into the townhouse, moving up the stairs to his private chambers with supernatural speed. He set her carefully on the bed, then began checking her over with gentle hands, cataloging every bruise and scrape Draven had inflicted. "I'm so sorry," he said, his voice rough. "This is exactly what I feared. They targeted you to get to me." "You couldn't have known," Willa said, catching his hands to still their frantic movement. "Jasper, look at me. I'm okay. Scared, but okay." "You could have died." His eyes met hers, and she saw raw fear there. "If Lucian and Seraphine hadn't been close enough to intercept, if I'd been even a few minutes later, Draven would have taken you somewhere I couldn't follow. I would have lost you. But you didn't. I'm here. We're both here." This time, Jasper pulled away, pacing to the window. "But Draven was right about one thing. You've made me vulnerable. As long as you're human, fragile, mortal, my enemies can use you against me. And I have many enemies, Willa. Vampires who resent my power, who want my territory, who would happily destroy you to weaken me." Willa's chest felt tight. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that I can't protect you adequately as long as you remain human. I'm saying that the only way to truly keep you safe is to turn you." The words hung in the air between them. Turn her. Make her a vampire. Immortal, powerful, safe from the threats that haunted Jasper's world. Also no longer human, no longer alive in any conventional sense. Frozen forever at her current age, drinking blood to survive, cut off from sunlight and normal human existence. "I can't ask that of you," Jasper continued before Willa could respond. "I won't ask it. You've built a life, a career. You have dreams that don't include being a creature of the night. I have no right to demand you sacrifice all of that for me." "But you want me to," Willa said quietly. "I want you safe." Jasper turned to face her, and his expression was anguished. I want to not live in constant fear that someone will hurt you to get to me. I want to spend centuries with you instead of a handful of decades before you age and die and leave me alone again. But I also want you to have the life you deserve, the one you've worked so hard to build. And I don't know how to reconcile those desires. Willa stood and crossed to where he stood by the window. Outside, she could see the lights of Manhattan, the city she'd moved to in pursuit of her dreams. She'd achieved those dreams, now established career, financial security, recognition from the art world, everything she'd wanted. But what she wanted had changed. She didn't want to be famous or successful. She wanted to create art that mattered, to share her vision with people who understood it, to spend her time with someone who loved her for exactly who she was. She wanted Jasper, not for a handful of decades, but forever. She wanted to walk through the vampire world without fear, to create art that explored immortal themes because she truly understood them, to never have to say goodbye to the man she loved. "Turn me," she said. Jasper went very still. "Willa, turn me," she repeated, stronger this time. "I've thought about this, Jasper. I knew this conversation was coming eventually, and I've decided. I don't want to spend the next 50 years watching you stay the same while I grow old. I don't want to be vulnerable to your enemies. I don't want to hide our relationship from the vampire world because I'm human, and that makes me a weakness. I want to be with you completely and permanently. So turn me." "You don't know what you're asking." Jasper's voice was strained. "Becoming a vampire means giving up everything human. Sunlight, normal food, the ability to have children. Your heart will stop beating. You'll need blood to survive. You'll watch every human you know age and die while you remain frozen. It's not romantic, Willa. It's a curse as much as a gift." "I know." Willa reached up to cup his face, making him meet her eyes. "I've been living in your world for months. I've talked to Seraphine and other vampires about what it means. I understand the sacrifice, and I'm willing to make it. For you. For us. For the chance at forever, instead of just a handful of years. If you regret it, I won't. If you hate me for changing you, I could never hate you." Willa pulled him down into a kiss, pouring all her certainty into it. "I love you, Jasper Constantine. I love you enough to choose immortality at your side over a normal human life without you. Please, let me make this choice." Jasper pulled back, studying her face with an intensity that felt like he was looking into her soul. Whatever he saw, there must have convinced him, because his resistance crumbled. "Are you absolutely certain?" he asked one final time. "Completely certain." "Then yes." He gathered her close and she felt him trembling. "Yes, I'll turn you. Tonight, before I lose my courage or you change your mind." "I won't change my mind." "I know." He pressed a kiss to her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. "I love you, Willa Rhodes. I'll love you for every night of our immortal existence, and I'll do everything in my power to ensure you never regret this choice." "I know," Willa echoed. "Now tell me what I need to do." The turning process was less romantic than Willa had imagined and more terrifying than she'd prepared for. Jasper explained it carefully first, making sure she understood every step. He would drain her blood until she was on the edge of death, then feed her his own blood to trigger the transformation. Her heart would stop, her human life would end, and then she'd wake as a vampire if the turning worked. There was always a chance it wouldn't. A small percentage of humans whose bodies rejected the vampire blood and simply died instead of transforming. "We can wait," Jasper said for the third time. "Make sure you're ready." "I'm ready," Willa insisted. "Let's do this before Draven or someone like him tries again." So Jasper laid her gently on his bed, arranging her carefully like she was something precious. He lit candles around the room, more for atmosphere than necessity since vampires could see perfectly well in darkness, and when everything was prepared, he stretched out beside her. "I'll make it as painless as possible," he promised. "Vampire venom has anesthetic properties. You'll feel pressure, maybe some burning, but the pain won't be severe. I trust you." He kissed her then, slow and deep, and when he pulled back his eyes had gone bright amber, his fangs extending. "I love you," he said one more time. "I love you too." Then his fangs sank into her throat, and the world dissolved into sensation. It didn't hurt exactly, more like intense pressure combined with a strange floating sensation. Willa felt her strength draining away, felt her heartbeat slowing, felt the edges of her vision going dark. She was dying, she realized with odd detachment. This was what death felt like, not frightening, just quiet, peaceful, like falling asleep. Jasper's voice called her back from the edge. "Willa, stay with me. Just a little longer." She forced her eyes open and found him above her, his mouth stained dark with her blood, his expression anguished. He bit into his own wrist, deep enough to make the blood flow freely, and pressed it to her lips. "Drink," he commanded. "Take my blood. Let it transform you." Willa's first instinct was revulsion. She was drinking blood, something primal in her recoiled from the idea, but then the taste hit her, and it was nothing like she'd expected. Copper and power and something electric that made her entire body sing. She drank deeply, desperately, feeling strength returning to her limbs even as her heart gave its final stuttering beats. Then everything stopped. Her heart was silent. Her lungs didn't move. She was dead, a corpse lying on Jasper's bed with his blood in her veins. Terror gripped her. This was wrong. She couldn't breathe, couldn't feel her heartbeat. Was this supposed to happen, or had something gone wrong? Easy. Jasper's voice cut through the panic. "You're dead, yes, but not gone. Let the transformation work. Your body is changing, rebuilding itself. It will take time." Time was a strange concept when you were dead. Willa lay there in Jasper's arms, feeling things shift inside her. Her senses were changing, sounds growing sharper, smells more distinct, her skin becoming more sensitive. Power was building in her muscles, in her bones, in her very cells as they transformed from human to something else. And then, after what felt like hours but was probably only minutes, Willa opened her eyes. The world had changed. Everything was sharper, clearer, more vibrant. She could see individual dust motes floating in the air, could hear conversations happening several floors below, could smell Jasper's scent, and 100 other things her human nose had never detected. Power thrummed through her body, supernatural strength that made her feel like she could lift the bed they were lying on without effort. "Willa?" Jasper was studying her face anxiously. "How do you feel?" She sat up, testing her new strength. "Strange, different. Everything is so intense. That will fade as you adjust. Your senses are heightened now, but you'll learn to filter the input." He helped her stand, and Willa was startled by how steady she felt. "Look in the mirror." Willa crossed to the full-length mirror in the corner of the room and gasped at her reflection. She looked like herself, but perfected somehow. Her skin had gone pale like all vampires, smooth and flawless. Her hair seemed shinier, her features more defined, and her eyes had changed from brown to a deep amber gold, bright and predatory. "I'm beautiful," she whispered. "You were always beautiful," Jasper said, appearing behind her in the mirror. "But yes, the transformation enhances physical appearance. It's part of how we hunt. Beauty attracts prey." The word hunt sent a strange thrill through Willa. She was hungry, she realized. Not for food, but for blood, the need burning in her throat like thirst magnified 1,000 times. "I need," she started. "I know," Jasper guided her away from the mirror. "We'll take care of that. I have stores available, blood from donors and blood banks. You don't have to hunt humans if you don't want to, though many vampires prefer it. That's a choice you can make once you're more in control." The next few hours passed in a blur of new sensations as Jasper taught her the basics of vampire existence: how to feed without killing, how to control her supernatural strength, how to move with vampire speed and grace. Willa was a quick study, adapting to her new nature with the same intensity she brought to everything else. By the time dawn approached, a dawn she'd never see again. With human eyes, Willa was exhausted in a way that had nothing to do with physical tiredness. She'd died and been reborn, transformed into something beyond human, and the weight of that change was finally hitting her. "I can't go outside anymore when the sun is up," she said quietly as she and Jasper returned to his chambers. "Can't eat normal food, can't have children, can't grow old with my human friends or—" "You can still create," Jasper interrupted gently. "You can still paint, still make art, still share your vision with the world. Your talent didn't die with your humanity, Willa. If anything, your new perspective will make your work even more powerful." He drew her into his arms, and Willa let herself lean against him, drawing comfort from his presence. "I chose this," she said. more to convince herself than him. I wanted this. I want to be with you forever. And I want that too, more than anything. Jasper kissed the top of her head. But I also want you to mourn what you've lost. Becoming a vampire means giving up parts of your human life, and those losses are real. You're allowed to grieve them while still being happy with your choice. Willa nodded against his chest. He was right. She could be happy about immortality with Jasper while still mourning the loss of sunrises and normal human experiences. The two emotions didn't cancel each other out. What happens now? She asked. Now you learn to be a vampire. I'll teach you everything you need to know. How to navigate our world, how to protect yourself, how to use your new abilities, and once you're ready, I'll present you to the court as my mate, and no one will dare threaten you again. Your mate? Willa pulled back to look at him. Is that different from just a partner? Very different. A mate bond is sacred among vampires, a lifelong commitment that's stronger than human marriage. If you agree to become my mate, you'll be queen of the American territories alongside me. My equal in all things, my partner in ruling, my companion for eternity. That sounds terrifying, Jasper smiled. It is, but I think you'll be extraordinary at it. You see people clearly, understand their motivations and needs. Those are crucial skills for leadership. Willa thought about it. Queen of the vampires. It sounded like something from a fantasy novel, not real life. But then again, she was a vampire now, and Jasper was a king, so maybe impossible things were just her life now. Ask me again in a few weeks, she said, when I'm more adjusted, when I know for sure I can handle this new existence. Fair enough, Jasper guided her toward the bed. For now you should rest. The sun is rising, and you'll feel the pull of day sleep soon. It's instinctive for our kind, we can resist it if necessary, but it's easier to surrender, especially when you're newly turned. Willa was about to protest that she wasn't tired, but suddenly exhaustion slammed into her like a physical force. Her eyes grew heavy, her body demanding rest in a way she couldn't fight. Sleep, Jasper said softly, settling beside her. I'll be here when you wake. Willa wanted to say something meaningful, something profound about her choice and their future. Instead, she managed only, love you, before sleep claimed her. When she woke, it was to the sensation of evening approaching. She could feel it somehow, the way the sun's presence faded from the world above. Jasper was already awake, watching her with an expression of such tender concern that it made her chest ache. How do you feel? He asked. Willa considered the question. She felt different, certainly. Stronger, faster, sharper than she'd ever been. The burning hunger in her throat had dulled to a manageable need rather than desperate craving. And when she looked at Jasper, she felt the same love she'd felt as a human, only intensified somehow, more vivid and immediate. I feel good, she said, and realized it was true. Really good, actually. Ready to start learning how to be a vampire. Jasper's smile was radiant. Then let's begin. The next 2 months were an intensive education in vampire existence. Jasper was a patient teacher, walking Willa through every aspect of her new life. She learned to hunt from willing donors at vampire establishments that catered to such needs, learning the delicate balance of taking enough to satisfy her hunger without harming her source. She learned to use her supernatural speed and strength, training with Lucian, who'd grudgingly admitted that her survival of Draven's attack had earned his respect until she could hold her own in a fight. Most importantly, she learned vampire politics and culture, the complex web of territories and hierarchies and ancient laws that governed her new world. Jasper included her in court meetings, teaching her how to read vampire body language, how to navigate the intricate social dynamics, how to lead with both strength and wisdom. Willa discovered she was good at it. Her artist's eye for detail helped her notice things others missed, and her empathy let her understand motivations that might not be obvious. Several vampires who'd initially dismissed her as Jasper's human distraction began treating her with genuine respect. You have a gift for this, Seraphine told her one evening after a particularly contentious court session that Willa had helped resolve. The king chose well. I'm still learning, Willa protested. We're all always learning. But you have good instincts. That matters more than experience. Seraphine paused, then added, I'm glad he has you. Jasper has been alone for too long. You remind him how to feel. Willa thought about that conversation later as she sat in the studio, working on a new painting. Her art had changed since her transformation, becoming darker and more complex. She could see things now that she'd only imagined as a human, the true beauty of darkness, the power of immortality, the weight of centuries. "That's extraordinary," Jasper said from the doorway, and Willa looked up to find him studying her canvas with an expression of awe. "You've captured something essential about vampire existence. The loneliness, yes, but also the transcendence. The way we're removed from humanity but still inextricably connected to it." "I'm painting from experience now," Willa said. "I understand what I'm trying to show instead of just guessing. It shows." He crossed to stand beside her, slipping an arm around her waist. "I think this might be your best work yet. High praise from a king with centuries of artistic knowledge. I mean it. You've found your true voice as an artist. This work will endure long after—" He stopped abruptly. "Long after what?" Willa prompted. "I was going to say long after both of us are gone, but that's not true anymore, is it? We're immortal. Your work will endure as long as we do, which could be millennia." The thought should have been frightening. Instead, Willa found it comforting. She'd have centuries to create, to refine her vision, to make art that mattered. And she'd have Jasper beside her the entire time. "I'm happy," she said, surprising herself with the realization. "I know I gave up a lot to become a vampire, but I'm genuinely happy with my choice." "I'm glad." Jasper pulled her close, and Willa went willingly, resting her head against his chest where a human heart would beat. "I've been worried you might regret it." "I don't. I miss some human things, sunrises mostly, and pizza. But what I have now is worth the sacrifice. I have you. I have eternity. I have a new perspective that's making my art better than ever. And I have a purpose beyond just surviving day to day." "Then there's something I want to ask you." Jasper pulled back slightly, and Willa saw nervousness in his expression. "You told me to ask again when you were adjusted, when you were sure you could handle vampire existence. It's been 2 months. You've proven yourself to the court, mastered your new nature, and continued creating extraordinary art. So I'm asking now. Willa Rhodes, will you be my mate? Will you rule beside me as Queen of the American Territories and spend eternity as my partner, my companion, my equal in all things?" Willa's breath caught, not that she needed to breathe anymore, but old habits persisted. 2 months ago, the question would have terrified her. Now it felt like the most natural thing in the world. "Yes," she said without hesitation. "Yes, I'll be your mate. I'll stand beside you and rule with you and love you for as long as we both exist." Jasper's smile could have lit the entire city. He kissed her then, deep and passionate and full of promise, and Willa felt something shift between them. The mate bond forming, she realized a supernatural connection that linked them on a level deeper than words or even thoughts. She could feel him now, his emotions and presence, a constant warm weight in the back of her mind, could sense his joy and relief and overwhelming love, all directed at her. "I can feel you," she whispered against his lips. "And I can feel you." That's the mate bond. We're connected now, Willa, truly connected in a way that can never be broken. Jasper rested his forehead against hers. "Thank you for choosing me, for choosing this life, for giving me back something I thought I'd lost forever." "What's that?" "Hope, purpose, joy, everything that makes immortality worth enduring." He pulled back, his amber eyes bright with emotion. "I love you more than I thought possible, Willa Rhodes, and I'll spend every night of our existence proving it." "I love you too," Willa said, and meant it with every part of her transformed self. The mating ceremony took place 1 week later in the Court of Night, with every vampire in the American Territories in attendance. It was a formal affair, governed by ancient traditions that predated most human civilizations. Willa wore a gown of midnight blue that Seraphine had helped her choose, and Jasper looked devastating in formal black, every inch the vampire king. The ceremony itself was surprisingly simple, an exchange of vows before the court, witnessed and recorded by vampire law. Willa pledged herself to Jasper and to the American Territories, promising to rule with wisdom and strength. Jasper pledged himself to Willa in return, promising partnership and equality in all things. When they sealed the bond with a kiss, power exploded through the room, the mate bond manifesting physically, visible even to the other vampires as golden light that connected them. The court erupted in applause, and Willa realized that many of them were genuinely happy for their king. He'd been alone for so long, isolated by his power and position. Having a mate meant he'd be stronger, more grounded, better able to lead. "Presenting Queen Willa Rhodes Constantine," the court herald announced, and Willa felt the weight of her new title settle over her shoulders. She was a queen now, co-ruler of the American vampire territories, with all the power and responsibility that entailed. The thought should have been overwhelming. Instead, with Jasper's hand in hers and his presence warm in her mind through their bond, Willa felt ready for anything. The celebration afterward was elaborate and went on until nearly dawn. Vampires from across the territories came to offer congratulations and pledge their loyalty to their new queen. Willa met them all with grace she hadn't known she possessed, drawing on Jasper's strength through their bond when her own confidence wavered. Lucian appeared near the end of the night, his expression unusually serious. "Your Majesty," he said to Willa, offering a formal bow, "I owe you an apology." Willa blinked in surprise. "You do?" "I doubted you, thought you were a distraction that would weaken the king. I was wrong. You've made him stronger, more engaged, better able to lead. And you've proven yourself in your own right. Your handling of the territorial dispute with the Southern Court last week was masterful. I'm honored to serve under your rule." He bowed again and withdrew before Willa could respond. She looked at Jasper, who was trying unsuccessfully to hide a smile. "High praise from Lucian," he said. "He doesn't apologize easily." "I'm still processing the fact that I helped resolve a territorial dispute," Willa admitted. "A month ago I was a waitress, now I'm negotiating vampire politics." "You were always capable of this. You just needed the opportunity to show it." Jasper pulled her close, and they swayed together to the music playing in the background. "You're going to be an extraordinary queen, Willa. I knew it from the moment I saw your work. You understand people, understand how to see beauty in darkness, understand what it means to transform pain into something meaningful. Those are exactly the skills needed to rule well. I just hope I don't mess it up." "You won't, and even if you make mistakes, we'll face them together. That's what mates do." Willa leaned into him, marveling at how much her life had changed in just a few short months. From struggling artist to vampire queen, from lonely nights in Brooklyn to eternity beside someone who loved her completely. "Thank you," she said softly. "For what?" "For defending me that night at the auction, for seeing something worth saving in my art and in me, for giving me the chance at this life, this love, this future. I know I've thanked you before, but I need you to know how much it means. You changed my entire existence." "You changed mine first," Jasper countered. "I was just living, going through the motions of existence without really feeling anything. You reminded me what it meant to be alive, or as close to alive as vampires can be. You gave me back my purpose, Willa. That's a gift beyond measure." They stayed like that for a long moment, wrapped in each other's arms as the celebration continued around them, two immortal creatures who'd found something rare and precious in each other. 1 year later, Willa stood in a New York gallery, looking at her latest exhibition. The show was titled Immortal Perspectives, and every piece explored themes of eternal existence, vampire culture, and the beauty of darkness. The opening night crowd was a mix of humans and vampires, the latter glamored to appear less obviously inhuman, and the response had been overwhelmingly positive. "This is remarkable work," a human critic was telling her colleague. "Rhodes has completely evolved as an artist. There's a depth to these pieces that goes beyond technical skill. It's like she's actually experienced the immortality she's painting." Willa hid a smile. If only they knew. "Your Majesty." Seraphine appeared at her elbow, keeping her voice low. "We have a situation developing at the court. Nothing urgent, but Jasper thought you should know." Willa nodded, making her excuses to the humans around her and following Seraphine out of the gallery. A sleek black car waited outside, and within minutes they were speeding toward the court of night. Being queen meant constant demands on her time, constant situations that needed her attention. But Willa found she didn't mind. She discovered a talent for leadership, for navigating the complex politics of vampire society, for finding solutions that balanced competing needs and ancient grudges, and she was never alone in it. Jasper was always there, their mate bond ensuring they could draw on each other's strength and perspective. They ruled together as true partners, and the American territories had prospered under their joint leadership. The situation at court turned out to be a minor territorial dispute that Willa resolved in under an hour. By the time she returned to the gallery, the opening was winding down, and Jasper had appeared to escort her home. "How was your exhibition?" he asked as they walked through the Manhattan night, hand in hand. "Successful. They love the new work," Willa smiled up at him. "Strange to think that a year ago I was terrified of being exposed as a fraud at that charity auction. Now I'm an established artist with a gallery representation and a waiting list of collectors. You earned every bit of that success. Your talent has nothing to do with what I did at the auction and everything to do with the quality of your work." "Maybe, but you gave me the chance to prove myself. Without your intervention, Chelsea would have destroyed my reputation before I could establish one." Jasper's expression darkened. "Speaking of Chelsea, I heard she's moved to Los Angeles. Apparently her father cut her off after the scandal. She's working in a coffee shop now." "That's sad," Willa said, and meant it. "She had talent, even if she was cruel." "You're too kind. She tried to ruin you. And failed, thanks to you. She's suffered enough consequences. I'm not interested in revenge, just in moving forward." They walked in comfortable silence for a while, and Willa marveled at the city around them. New York at night was her domain now, a glittering kingdom that she ruled alongside the man she loved. She could see things in the darkness that humans missed, the hidden beauty, the secret life, the way shadows could be as illuminating as light. "Are you happy?" Jasper asked suddenly. Willa stopped walking and turned to face him. "Completely. Why do you ask?" "Because I want to make sure. You gave up so much to be with me, your humanity, your normal life, the chance at growing old and having human experiences. I need to know you don't regret it." "I don't." Willa reached up to cup his face, this beautiful ancient creature who'd chosen her. "I love my life, Jasper. I love ruling beside you, creating art that reflects my true perspective, being part of the vampire world. I love you. I've never been happier." "Good." He pulled her close, and they kissed there on the Manhattan street, two immortal beings bound together by love and choice and the magic of a mate bond that would last forever. "Because I intend to spend the rest of eternity making sure you stay happy." "The rest of eternity," Willa repeated, tasting the words. "That's a long time." "It is. Think you can handle it?" "With you? Absolutely." They continued walking, heading toward home and whatever challenges the future might bring. Willa knew there would be difficulties ahead. Vampire politics were complex, and eternity was a long time to navigate the dangers of their world. But she also knew they'd face everything together, supported by their mate bond and their love for each other. She'd been meant to be shamed before everyone that night at the auction, exposed as a fraud and destroyed before her career could begin. Instead, the Vampire King had risen and ended it cold, defending her with power and certainty that had transformed her entire existence, and now she stood beside him as his equal, his mate, his queen. Together, they ruled the darkness, created beauty from shadow, and proved that love could flourish even in the immortal night. It was more than Willa had ever dreamed possible when she was a lonely human artist. But then, she had learned that impossible things happened all the time in the vampire world. You just had to be brave enough to embrace them. And Willa Rhodes Constantin, vampire queen and artist, had never been short on courage. Years passed, then decades, and still Willa's happiness endured. She continued creating art that evolved with her growing understanding of immortality, each piece more profound than the last. She ruled alongside Jasper with wisdom and compassion, earning the respect and loyalty of vampires across the American territories and beyond. Their love only deepened with time, the mate bond growing stronger with each passing year until Willa couldn't imagine existing without Jasper's presence in her mind and heart. They were truly two halves of one whole, partners in every sense of the word. And on quiet nights when the city slept and they had time to themselves, They'd return to the studio where everything had changed. They'd create together the way they had that first night, Jasper's technical skill combining with Willa's emotional depth to produce art that neither could have made alone. "Thank you," Jasper said one such night, and Willa looked up from her canvas in surprise. "For what? For saying yes? For trusting me? For becoming my mate and my partner and my equal? For giving me back everything I thought I'd lost?" He set down his brush and crossed to pull her into his arms. "I love you, Willa. I'll love you forever, through every night of our eternal existence." "I love you too," Willa replied, meaning it with every part of her immortal soul. Forever. And in the darkness of their shared studio, surrounded by centuries of art and culture, two vampires held each other close and celebrated the impossible love that had saved them both. They had forever, and they intended to make every moment count.